Even outside of sports, for sure. It was just, I think that day will be the greatest day of my life. I mean,
Ever since I was a kid, sports has been in my life, from either playing football and baseball to watching those two. Some nights, trying to recite the starting lineup to get a piece of dessert. Sports gives you the thrills, the highs and lows of seeing your team come back and march to a victory, or seeing them take utter defeat. Having pride in your team and being able to back them no matter what. There is no exact definition a person can tell you when you ask what it means to them. There's just those certain plays that come back that show you what it really means to you. That's why sports are so special.
1969. Not the start of the Cubs curse, but definitely one of the highlight moments. On this day, the Cubs were in first place of the newly formed NL East when a black cat crossed their path and stared them down. 27 games later, they had lost 18 of those games and failed to make the playoffs. This is just another example of how the Chicago Cubs curse has ravaged the team's history and tormented its fans for decades. Cubs fans had suffered for decades and were hoping that one of these games, the ball would bounce their way. But it never seemed to. In 1998, the Cubs would have made the playoffs with a win on the last game of the regular season. However, a key drop by Brent Brown sent the Brewers to the playoffs instead, and Cubs fans continued agony. However, the curse of 1998 seemed like nothing compared to 2003. The Chicago Cubs were in the NLCS playing the Florida Marlins. While this error may seem innocent enough in an isolated event, it was the play before it that was one of the most infamous plays in Chicago Cubs history. A routine foul ball going down the line has gone up for a catch when a fan seems to reach out into the field of play. This fan is Steve Bartman. While Steve's incident was an isolated event and didn't cost the Cubs anything in retrospect, it was the fact that he was a fan of the Chicago Cubs, and yet the fans also seemed to get in the way and couldn't help the Cubs get a title. The Cubs fans believed that he was the human embodiment of a curse, someone who, while rooting for the team, found a way to keep the team from achieving its goal. So the question is, what fan would stand by a team that seemingly religiously squanders division leads and playoff chances? What sort of insanity keeps a fan to watch a team fail over and over with just the hope of seeing them rise once?
Well, my dad was born and raised in Chicago. Half my family lives there. So, when he had me, he taught me to be a Cubs fan, Bulls fan, Bears fan. So, in short, he raised me right.
Too bad we couldn't have had a victory that meant a pennant, but that will come. Sure as God made green apples, someday the Chicago Cubs are going to be in a World Series, and maybe sooner than we think.
The World Series did not come sooner than expected, as Harry Carey passed away before they made it. But in 2016, Cubs fans were ecstatic. They beat the Giants, they beat the Dodgers, and they were on their way to the World Series. Now, most Cubs fans knew that this finally might be their time, but it wasn't an easy road ahead, as they had to take on the AL powerhouse Cleveland Indians. The first game didn't go exactly as planned. Cleveland Indians routed the Chicago Cubs 6-0, and fans were wondering how easy would this really be? Were the Indians the better team, or were the Cubs? After 108 years, the Cubs hopefully were going to end their drought. And as Game 2 arrived, they were ready to play. 5-1 win for the Chicago Cubs brought them tied to a 1-1 series. With the series tied 1-1, many Cubs fans thought this was their year, 2016. But Game 3 did not go exactly as planned. With tremendous catches and a lot of hype, Cubs legend Billy Williams throws out the first pitch in what many hope be a 2-1 lead for the Cubs. Yet it didn't go quite exactly as planned. Game 3 went to Cleveland 1-0, as well as Game 4 7-2. And many Cubs fans were left wondering. And after a 3-1 hole, Cubs fans were left bewildered, wondering if another chance at a title would slip away, because the curse would rear its ugly head and lead them down a path of misery.
I wouldn't say their curse was going through their mind. We have like a lot of young guys on the team, so I don't believe that a lot of the players were thinking of the curse. They were just thinking about what they probably could have done better.
As the 3-1 deficit emerged, fans had different reactions to what was going on. Some fans were optimistic, with the curse not even in their minds. Some fans lost all hope, saying the curse was to blame.
When the series was at 3-1, I thought it was pretty much over. I almost couldn't watch the next game because the thought of the Cubs losing another chance just made me sick. No one in my family really talked about it because that was always a tough subject, especially my grandfather, who had been talking a bunch of shit before the game. with his buddies, and it was just not looking good.
Cubs fans had born, lived, and died generations without seeing a title. Many of these fans thought this would be the closest they'd ever see to their team achieving the goal. And many of these fans also thought that the World Series was out of reach and that history would repeat itself.
Like you said, when Ajay Davis hit that two-run homer in the bottom of the eighth off Chapman, I don't believe the players think of the curse. Me myself personally was thinking about it a little bit, but yeah. Then we got the rain delay, and I believe that was a little gift from the man above, just kind of maybe like cooling us down, just giving some time to relax and think about what needs to get done next.
All right, so when the Cubs won that second game, the series is at 3-2. I just felt like the universe was playing tricks on me, and like the curse was just waiting to like build my hope up, and then to just take the carpet like from under my feet. And I just wanted to build up that hope, but I just really was getting frustrated and didn't want myself to get to that part.
Well, I mean, obviously most of the hard work to force the game 7, that's already been accomplished. That's already been done. So to get to that game 7, we kind of I felt like the team just was more relaxed to get to game 7. So since we were there, I was a little more anxious. I was a little scared about what could happen, but I believe that the team was ready. And
with the series now tied 3-3 after a 9-3 win by the Cubs, Cubs fans were eagerly awaiting the chance to be crowned champions once more. But that was no simple task, as they had to head back to Cleveland for Game 7. In the early stages of Game 7, this looks like it had the makings of a good one. Following a home run by the Chicago Cubs in the first inning, the Indians struck back and make this game worth your while, inning by inning, pitch by pitch, and out by out.
Just imagine everybody on the edge of their seat. The anticipation leading up to the game was just immense, and then every pitch, every swing, you feel it in the pit of your stomach, and everybody's leaning in, and it's just really, 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 really tense. And then it's the bottom of the ninth, bottom of the 10th, and you're just starting to feel like every single hit or every single swing that made by an Indians player that was it. And like you're just waiting to lose, and then at the end you win, and you're just completely just knocked back and just start just awestruck because you never thought in a million years this was ever going to happen.
This fan group, tortured and tormented for over a century without a title, how is it that they stayed so loyal?
Every game, just with hope, with a little bit more passion than I guess most fans would have for the other teams. Just that thought in the back of your mind, just like, all right, this could be the one. This game could start something, or this game could start something good or start something bad. So I guess we'll see each game.
Whether you're an 80-year-old grandparent or a 12-year-old grandson, both can just jump in exhilaration for what has just occurred. The Chicago Cubs are once again World Series champions after a 108-year drought. To an average person, this isn't a very important feat. The Cubs just won the World Series. This happens every year. But to these die-hard true Cubs fans, they know what this really means to them. They can't put it into words. All they can do is scream, shout, and yell for their beloved Cubs. Because after 108 years, after grandparents taught them to love the Cubs, after their parents taught them to love the Cubs, after their aunt, their uncle, all their family members taught them to love the Cubs, throughout their agony, throughout their misery, throughout everything has gone on in their miserable franchise history, the Cubs have finally won the World Series, and they can finally rejoice and say that they are truly champions. When you ask a Chicago Cubs fan what they want for Christmas, they're not going to answer with, I want a car, I want a TV. They're going to answer, or I want money. They're going to say one thing, I want a Chicago Cub victory. And after 108 years, the Christmas present finally came true. Because most fans will tell you they've been waiting their entire life for a World Series victory. And in this moment, on this day, that finally happened for them. If you're not a Cubs fan, you can't feel the satisfaction and burden that has been lifted. If you are a Cubs fan, you can't truly explain the feeling you have to someone else. If you're not a sports fan in general, you cannot understand how a fan can live and die on every play, call, and final score. How your team is your bloodline, and how sports and American culture have been hand in hand since the start of the nation.
And the feeling for these fans after the Cubs had captured the title?
I mean, I've yet to, be married, have yet to have a kid, but November 2nd, 2016, the Cubs went over those stage. That's probably going to be the best day of my life.